if we wanted to position ourselves to make sure that we could switch and change and grow with our membership, we needed to make sure that our core was positioned to do that.
Customer experience is going through a transformation, particularly in the credit union space. And as more and more institutions switch to a digital or mobile-first experience, that personal level of service, the things that really make community financial institutions special, becomes different and sometimes a lot more difficult to execute on that. We have with us today to talk about that, Amy McGraw. Amy is the Vice President of Marketing and the Chief Experience Officer for Tropical Financial Credit Union, one of the largest credit unions in Southeast Florida, hovering right now around $1 billion in assets. Amy, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for inviting me. This is going to be fun.
So Amy, you've been with Tropical for about a dozen years now and have seen quite a transformation in your strategy and your approach and what you're doing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience and kind of how things have changed for you guys?
I think from a marketing perspective, one of the biggest changes has been a transition from traditional marketing over to digital marketing. And one of the things that we used to do when I first started here, we had a marketing calendar, and there'd be campaign. And it would be like, okay, we're going to do auto loans in spring and the fall. But people need auto loans 12 months out of the year. And because Tropical is a credit union, Tropical Financial credit unions don't have the deep pockets to do a lot of traditional broadcasts, especially in an expensive media market like Southeast Florida, like Florida. So we had to, once digital opened up, there was a way for us to be able to promote the products all year long, as well as targeting. Now, when we started doing that, we realized we could have conversations with people about different financial products and services in a digital space. We didn't necessarily have to be one-on-one, person-to-person. There were ways to do this, but to make it feel personal. And that's kind of been my mission since I've been here, is how do we keep people helping people, which is what credit unions are known for, alive and well and thriving in a digital space, which is what the migration was happening over time. More and more financial institutions are going to digital, and more people wanted to do business on digital platforms, especially younger generations that grew up in the virtual world, so to speak.
So was that a wholesale change for the credit union as far as like your strategy
really
and how your spend was?
Yeah, it was a complete mind shift. When I started here, we had a footprint of 22 branches, and a lot of those were in stores like Walmart. We had quite a few branches inside of Walmarts. And it was very expensive. And we started realizing that we could do just as much at much more efficient cost by doing things in a digital space. But then we also had to put the investments into digital so that experience would meet the expectations of consumers as time went on. And that's also been an interesting challenge. So we've kind of had to think outside the box and find a lot of partners to work with. That's another thing. The rise of fintechs has allowed us to do some things that the big banks were doing, but do it at a much more efficient cost because they could work with different partners like credit unions across the country and allow us to give those same experiences to consumers at a much lower cost per person, so to speak.
So what was an example of that? What was a partnership that really worked for you, kind of added a lot of new tools to your toolbox?
Sure. We work with a company called, I call them ChannelNet. I think they call themselves One Click now. They have allowed us to create individualized personalized URLs for every single member. So what we do is we feed them information about our members in terms of the different products and services that they have. We have AI modeling that goes in there that takes some of the things that they tell us through our HubSpot marketing automation platform, and we feed it back into them so that we're delivering on those pearls content that's curated by member. So I know a lot of times people think personalization is saying, "Dear Amy," and that's personalization. No, that's not. That's just a data point that you pull in and say, here, I'm delivering this to Amy, so let's call her by her name. But what is the content of that message? And does that pertain to Amy? And that's the difference that Channel has been able to make for us, that we're able to deliver curated content to each individual member based on the different products and services that they have with us, as well as how they interact with that individual pearl. I'll give you an example. So we have AI modeling that goes in and says, Amy looks like she's paid off an automobile, and it looks like she's been doing some searching around our auto loan pages. So let's start giving her content, all content that's educational based about, is it better to go through, get a lease, or is it better to buy? What is the difference between the different types of loans? What is it? How do I avoid the F&I office so I don't get taken at the dealer? What are some other options that I might have? So we start feeding this content to Amy so that she knows some different, she can educate herself. And as she interacts with that content, it sort of fuels more content. Now, Amy decides, yep, you know what? I'm going to pull the trigger and I'm going to buy a car. And I'm going to use the auto advisor service, which is a concierge service, so I never even have to go into the dealership, and they're going to deliver that car to me for test driving and to close the deal right then and there, and I'm going to be super happy. Once I've done that, then the AI model goes, oh, she did what we asked her to do, so let's remove all that auto content because she's bought it now. So, oh gosh, look at her savings account is kind of big. Maybe we should talk to her about investment and insurance services so she doesn't have a whole bunch of money sitting out there and earning very little interest. You kind of get the idea, though. It depends on the individual person and what they're doing, and that then dictates the content that they're going to get. And if they get the product that you've been sort of promoting or the educating around, then that drops off and the next one comes up, so that they're constantly getting education. And if they're not interested in it and they don't engage with it, then that will slowly drop off and be replaced by something else. That's what ChannelNet has done, and it has been a huge game changer for us.
So where is that content showing up? Like, how do you syndicate to them, or like, how does that affect their experience?
It shows up if you go to tropicalfcu.com and you click in sign in. What you, as a non-member, are going to see some very generic content about, I think it's about our digital banking offerings. It's going to be very generic because you're not a member. But if you're a member of ours and you've engaged with an email that talks about your personalized URL, even before you sign in, it's going to say, hey, Amy, hey, Rich, here's some information, and it's going to be all the same stuff that we just talked about. Then you sign into online banking, either on your computer or on your phone, and you're going to see a little section, a little module inside of online banking that has that same content that you can engage with. In the mobile app, there's actually a launching point that you could even says my personal web page. You click that and it takes you right over to your Pearl. So there's 3 different ways you can engage with that content. Before you ever even log in, just on the sign-in page, we have an iframe that delivers that individual content, or we have it inside of online banking, or we have it as a launching point within the mobile app.
So how about in like your outbound campaigns, the way you reach out or engage with your customers? Is that impacted there at all? Like, are you using that information as part of that?
We do, absolutely. There's there's a cadence of emails that ChannelNet actually originates, again, based on the different content and things that people are engaging with in their pearls. Now, if somebody doesn't engage with a pearl, they're going to get the generic content. They have to engage at least one time to get over and basically be cookied so that we can start tracking them and following them and delivering the content based on what they're looking for. We have about half our members engaging with their pearls right now. And the interesting thing is we just did a core conversion. Scary, I know. But we just did that back about a little less than a year ago. And when we did that, we were I was making a point and I forgot what the point was. Do you ever have that happen to you?
Yeah.
Anyway, we went through a core conversion. And our members will be very vocal. That was, I guess, the point about what they like and what they don't like about anything with Tropical. And when we went through the core conversion, we still have little data points that are still sometimes getting messed up. And we had several members all of a sudden contact us saying, hey, this is saying, dear somebody I've never heard of before. And the content is changing. And it turned out that something slipped in the data that was being delivered over to ChannelNet. Within 24 hours, well, it was within a few hours of a member contacting us, we were able to track that, figure it out. We turned off the naming, the actual personalization part, fixed it, and then relaunched it, and then called back the members who had contacted us to make sure that they were seeing the correct name. So even, our members, once they engage with that, they engage with it, and they let us know if anything seems off.
So I mean, like, God bless you for doing a core migration like that. That's never, that's a high wire act, right? And no matter what size institution you are. What kind of drove that decision? Was it
again
customer aspect?
Technology.
Was this cost driven, or
it was technology? We were on a core that was very antiquated, and it was not what we call a plug and play type of a core. So anything we want to do, remember those fintech partnerships I talked to you about? Those fintech partnerships would have to plug in through a data warehouse. We couldn't plug anything directly into the core. I mean, obviously, when I say there's a lot that goes into plugging anything into the core, obviously, but it wasn't. We were not positioned for a future of integrating new technologies. So that became a real clear, especially in 2020. That was real clear that if we wanted to position ourselves to make sure that we could switch and change and grow with our membership, we needed to make sure that our core was positioned to do that. And we just couldn't do that with that older, antiquated core. So we moved up to a better, much more cutting edge type of a core. The biggest change for our members with that core conversion was the old core was what was considered to be account-based. So people, if you had multiple accounts, you had to have multiple logins for online banking. Not exactly efficient, not exactly a good experience. We moved over to a member-centric type of a system so that if you had multiple accounts, one login, you saw everything right there. The problem with that is if you had a bunch of
really
feature
function.
You saw all those memberships too in one place, and that kind of threw everything.
So feature function, and then this idea of the extensibility of your customer experience was really kind of the driving element to that.
Experience drives a lot of what we do. We want to make sure, and here's something that's really important. I think a lot of financial institutions forget about. There's a very important data point in the equation of the member customer experience, and that is the employee experience. And I think a lot of financial institutions are so focused on that customer experience, they forget that if you put a bigger burden on the employee to try to make that customer experience better, you actually are diminishing the effectiveness of that customer experience. Because regardless, even if the employee is not directly communicating with that customer, they still will have an impact on it. If they are burdened with extra things that they have to do and a less efficient job description, then that will spill over into the member or customer experience. So it really was critical that when we were evaluating these core systems, that we look for efficiencies for the employees as well as that customer experience. So yes, customer experience drives everything, but we never leave out that employee experience, a very, very important part of the equation.
So that seems like an important factor, thinking through. As you said, you're going through this transition from a more retail brick and mortar experience into a digital first, maybe digital only for a number of your members. That the ability of your own employees, particularly your first line and support employees, to offer that service, their experience with it, their ability to kind of, in as frictionless way as possible, provide that becomes like this important success factor.
It has to be. You have to include it. If they have to jump through more hoops to try to solve an issue for a member, it's bad for both of them. And that frustration of the employee will come through in their communication, whether it's verbal communication or even through email. It absolutely will come through. And then that affects your member experience. And we see it. We see it all the time in terms of, we pay very close attention to not only reviews in terms of Google reviews, Yelp reviews, and Facebook reviews, but we also do Net Promoter surveys. But here's the thing, and I think a lot of, again, financial institutions who do Net Promoter, they look at that Net Promoter score, but they're not paying attention to anything else. We have 5 experience questions. We even have added in a how do you feel about your financial health question into our Net Promoter surveys that we send out, but we also have a comment section. And everybody who leaves a comment, good or bad, gets a phone call back from a senior leader. And I think that's an important part of the experience. There was even somebody who wrote in one of their comments about they were frustrated about an employee experience because the employee couldn't answer their question. And they even wrote in their comment, not that it would matter, nobody reads these anyway. As soon as they hit submit, we get an email. Within a minute, they had a phone call and they were floored. A, that somebody actually called them back. B, that we listened to them. And a lot of times that's all they want, is to be able to have somebody listen to them. And C, it was provided us with a coaching opportunity for that employee who was a newer employee who just needed to understand the different departments and how they could have helped that member. Because we try to get that single point of contact or contact resolution so that we're not bouncing members all over the place, because that's, again, a very bad experience.
So is that primarily how you manage that or measure the success of that process? Was your kind of external member experience, your surveying process?
Yes. Yeah, we do a lot of surveying. We do a full member. It's interesting because when you do Net Promoter, we do Net Promoter on a regular basis because we're doing them all year long. We're doing it based on actual interactions and engagement with the credit union, transactions, loans, even withdrawn loans. We want to know, we want to hear from our members and the consumers who've engaged with us what their experience has been. But then every 2 years, we do a full member survey. We engage a research company to come in and do that. And it's very interesting because we still ask that same Net Promoter question, but when you ask it to people who've not really engaged with any employees for a while, that score is very different than the one that when they actually do engage with you. It's a much higher one with the engagement ones than it is with the ones that we're sending out to regular members who we don't have that opportunity with. And it's been interesting because as a senior leadership team, we're always talking about ways to try to engage with people that we haven't heard from in a while, or who haven't done a transaction in a while. Those also can be really good interactions and engagement because they can kind of give us an idea of what is it that we're not providing that might cause them to want to end the relationship or slowly move it to another institution.
So how much do you leverage third party for that? Like somebody who's not with the bank, who's not a named and bank employee, to kind of solicit that feedback?
Oh, we absolutely work with third party for that. I think it's really important to keep in terms of actually doing the surveys. In terms of the results of the surveys, and we get those back immediately, and our team does follow up with the individual members. We don't rely on that third party for that. But for administering the surveys, we completely rely on third-party research firms for that. They have the expertise. They've helped us build the surveys. They've helped us administer the surveys. We're actually adding collections into the Net Promoter surveys. We call our collections department Member Solutions. We don't like to call it collections as a very negative connotation. Again, credit unions are known for trying to reach out and help our members. And that's one of the reasons we're asking people about that health question, because we want to know if people are starting to feel vulnerable. We actually have this, the scale is healthy, coping, and vulnerable. And if we start seeing people slipping from coping to vulnerable, we want to be able to reach out to them to help them before they get to that point of drowning, if you know what I mean. And the way the economy is, and the way people, if you follow it from a macro perspective, the feeling, even though you hear on the news how great the economy is doing, it's getting so much better, but if you actually talk to individuals, they aren't feeling like it's that much better. So it's important for us to know ahead of time before somebody gets into that trouble position so that we can help them. Because I don't think a lot of people want to talk about it when they're in trouble. And they just sort of do the ostrich, put their head in the sand and hope it goes away. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. So we have an entire member solutions department dedicated to reaching out to our members, hopefully ahead of time, so that we can put them in a position of feeling much more confident with their finances than maybe they did beforehand.
So does having a kind of digital first or digital only, as we said, experience, does that make that kind of feedback, that feel for customers easier or harder?
Oh, it's definitely harder. I mean, anything that we do to try to keep that humanity or human feel is so much harder in a digital space. It's interesting because the past couple of years have been the very first years in the history of banks versus credit unions that banks have started to outperform credit unions in terms of customer service. And it's not that all of a sudden the banks are hiring nicer people. It's because the banks are doing a better job at creating that feeling of customer service or that they're there or personalization through digital than credit unions have been able to. That's why it's been such a big focus of ours. But that's why we're asking these questions so that we know that our people, when it's time to start reaching out to folks before they get in a position where they're in trouble. But the only way we can do that is to ask the questions. And we do it digitally. We do it through emails. We do it through, even the survey itself is all done through a web page. So they're not actually talking to anybody. They have that feeling a bit of anonymity, but we know who they are. So when they do submit that and we do see that, they've slipped from healthy to vulnerable or coping, or from coping to vulnerable, we want to be able to put the member solutions department in a position where they can look at the member's full account and go, okay, let's reach out to these folks and see what we can do to help them. And we have lots of different programs and options for people, but we don't advertise them. We just reach out to them to let them know. And we also, we do other things for our members that we have a program. I'll give you a secret.
Oh, okay. We're all about secrets. Yeah.
Don't tell anyone. It's called the Smile Program. Mm-hmm. And it's not something we advertise, because if we advertised it, everybody would try to use it. And what the Smile Program is it's an opportunity for every single employee of this credit union to give a gift to our members if that member has engaged with them about something that's going on with their lives. It doesn't have to be on the phone. It doesn't have to be in person. It can be via email. Can even be through chat. Can be through text. And I'll give you an example. Like if a member is just calling in to do a transfer, or is just texting to say, how do I set up a savings account? I'm about to be a grandmother for the first time. That employee immediately sees, oh, that's an exciting event that's happened in this member's life. And they're empowered to send that member. They can send them an Amazon gift card. They can send them flowers. There's a whole list of things that they can do, anywhere from a $5 coffee card all the way up to basically $599. And the reason it's $599 is the $600 is where you have to 1099. Nobody wants a 1099 a gift. Yeah. And the reason it might be something that high, and we've had members who've been in situations where a loss of a spouse, a loss of a job, and they literally have told us they're having to make a decision between food on the table and paying the electric bill. And we may not be able to pay it every single month, but doggone it, we're not going to have to make that choice for this month. Let's give them 30 days to be able to see if they can fix whatever it is, get a new job or whatever it is. So let's pay their electric bill for this month. Something along those lines. And it has made a huge difference. Ironically, the small gifts, $5, $10 gift cards, will prompt a handwritten note quicker than anything else, because it's something that they don't expect from the financial institution. This is another way we can connect human to human in a digital type of an environment, or phone call or whatever. Yeah. It allows us to do either on the spot or something we can send to them even through email.
So that's like a page out of like the Zappos playbook, right?
Yeah. Or, what's the hotel? The Ritz-Carlton type of hotel. The guy who changes the light bulb is still charged with interacting and engaging with a guest. It's along those same type of lines. And I think it's such an important part of customer service in terms of really connecting with people. More so than just doing transactions or helping them get an auto loan. Or, I mean, I don't know about you, but if you have ever gone to a house closing for somebody you helped get a mortgage, or you were a part of the process, either through real estate or whatever, watching them get the keys for the very first time, and it is like a transformational experience to be a part of that.
Major life event. Right.
It's a major life event, and it should be celebrated more so than just a bottle of wine or whatever. I mean, yeah, that's great. Don't get me wrong. And we actually have gifts for our mortgage loan officers to give to people, cutting boards or something like that. But, and this is something, we had a particular mortgage loan officer who would always out of his own pocket do something special for the family. And I thought, why not expand that out and have every employee, not just mortgage loans, not just frontline, but even somebody in operations who's handling a wire for somebody because they're buying a house or something along those lines. Maybe they're the ones who can then reach out to the member and congratulate them on this major life event. So I think it's that kind of thing that allows us to connect with people and fulfill the mission of credit unions, of people helping people.
So some of the things you've talked through of like how you're changing doing business, this the digital aspect, the additional aspect of personalization, the lower footprint from a retail standpoint replaced by a digital and mobile experience. This, how do we reach out and help people when we're kind of going about a different way? And on top of that, it sounds like there's probably a lot of underlying data that drives a lot of this, like you talked about with your fintech integrations. All of that is, I'm imagining, different than the way the credit union was operating a decade ago. Like, how have you kind of dealt with that from a change standpoint, from a, we're going to do business differently now than we have in the past?
Have you ever read the book, Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We made sure every employee in this credit union read that book. I'm not kidding. I think it was important for people to understand that change is a part of our business model. It just is. It is not going to go away. The one constant is going to be change. And I think that if 2020 taught us anything, it was definitely that we had to be agile. We had to be able to move quickly. There is a gentleman by the name of James Robert Lay, and he has a business called Digital Growth Institute. He is in the process, I think they're just about to release a book that I believe is called Banking on Change. And it used to be banking on digital, and it was all about growth in the digital space. But when he was going through that process, and I've worked a lot with him as a consultant, when he was going through that process, the one thing he did see was change management was something really difficult for credit unions. And it is difficult, all the way from the top, all the way down. Change management has got to be a part of our everyday existence. So we understood that even going into the core conversion. And like I said, after 2020, agility became a very important part, or a pillar of this credit union moving forward. So we make sure that when we're bringing people onto the team, especially in any kind of leadership or management role, that they understand that the way it is today is not going to be the way it is tomorrow. And we're always looking for people who can think outside the box to create efficiencies, create a better member experience using digital and mobile first as that foundation. So change, it's been interesting because I'm somebody, actually, my background before I ever came into credit unions, I worked as a live sports producer. And if you want to talk about there being things you have to be prepared for that you're not prepared for, try producing live sports, because you never know what's going to happen. So it definitely prepared me for what I'm up against today, which is constant change, and I thrive from it. But it is something that we do have to constantly nurture and help our employees along. And basically, when we were going through the core conversion, we had a lot of retirements. That's because some people just didn't want to learn a new way of doing things. And that's okay. That's absolutely fine. It's we always talk about that we want to help people grow, but if they don't want to grow, that's okay. Then we can kind of help them find other opportunities. So I think that's an important part of who we are. But this particular credit union, and the culture is a culture of change and agility. And I think we've done a pretty good job so far moving forward and keeping that line. We call ourselves fast followers. We don't want to be on the bleeding edge necessarily, but we like to be that fast follower position so that we can give the best member experience and the best efficiencies to employees as well as our members.
Yeah, I think that's a key theme that we hear an awful lot, that the idea of, staying relevant, staying important and essential to customers and members has a lot to do with your ability to kind of keep up with changing tastes, changing expectations, and keeping pace with what the alternatives are there, and not just keeping pace, but being able to differentiate on the parts that's really important for them. So,
agreed.
Amy, you gave us a lot here. Thank you very much for kind of sharing with us. This is a great experience. If anybody's interested in learning more about Tropical FCU or about you, where can they go?
TropicalFCU.com. That's us.
Great. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.